Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to our second episode of 2025, the Online Bible Institute Network's podcast. I'm Douglas Laws. With me is my father, Pastor Steve Laws, founder of the Online Bible Institute. Been going since 2014, doing a really great job with that, and he's helping train leaders to train leaders. That's the whole goal of this, and that's what this podcast was created to do. We can talk about our sermons and train you guys in that. And it's discipleship, and we, only write one sermon a week, which is also really cool. Well, you're writing probably many sermons a week, or thinking about many sermons a week anyway. Dad. Like, what's your approach to sermon prep? I think that's a good thing to talk about for those of us who are trying to become in ministry. Like, what's your weekly sermon prep?
Well, I have found that for me, I like having a series. It's obvious, because that
And then
lets
a
me,
series in a series.
well, it just lets me sort of think about, okay, what do I want to accomplish? So like this is actually part of a 2-year idea that I had. And so that's allowed me to structure quite a few things and then figure out ahead of time, okay, what are the main points that I want to make? And then dwell on that for a while, and then think about, okay, where should we be to really sort of focus in on those points, and then what does the text kind of open up to as you're going through it in some sort of, because some people do eliminate all this by just doing verse by verse by verse, which is, you always know what you're going to be talking about, right? And then other people go completely the other end, which is all topical. Like, so they could be anywhere at any time, topic, topic, topic. Um, so I kind of try and like something in the middle where I have a flow, and kind of working through either a section or a book or something, but then from each teaching there's some topics that pop out, and you try and make it relatable to what people are living. And then you have the same thing too, because the listeners all come at it in different spots.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some people that have been doing, a long time with the Lord and have heard a lot of things. You have some people that have, some years in, but you got some brand new people. You got some people that aren't in at all yet. And you sort of want to think about each one of those groups and how they're going to receive what you have to say. And then you balance all of that and you figure out what time you have, and you don't always get it right. And, you do the best you can with what you've got. At our church, we're kind of fortunate because we do 4 services every weekend.
All right,
So
Saturday is our most appreciated service because
yeah, because we
we
have
we
Saturdays
figure out what works,
to figure out how long it takes, what works, what
what
didn't work.
doesn't
Oops,
work.
that didn't work at all. So,
That joke
um,
offended too many people, you know.
yeah, yeah. But there's just a lot of, it gives us a lot of room to that a lot of guys don't get. If you only got one shot at it every week, um, you get what
Yeah,
you get, and that's fine. That's just not how I've done it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
When
So sermon prep, we're going to hang out in this series that we're in now, Kingdom Incarnate, really kind of looking at seeing and knowing Jesus is kind of one of the themes, and then focusing in on the tabernacle and the temple and the cross and the resurrection, which will get us ready for that next series, which will be in Acts and the letters, and parts of Revelation, even talking about the tension that we live in, which will be I'm looking forward to that. That's probably going to be a long one because we can bring in all the kingdom of God stuff and the now and the not yet stuff, and
very vineyardy coming up.
yeah, very, very much us. And then that last one, Kingdom Consummated, will really focus in on the last 2 chapters of Revelation, and we can spend a long time there. I mean, we spent 10 weeks at least on the first 2 chapters of Genesis. So I'm hoping to tie some of those themes together. The trees and people and rivers and waters, and I mean it's all there from the first
Hmm.
two to the last two, and it's like, okay, look, so we didn't miss those things. So yeah, that's kind of how that works. And we looked at John chapter 1 in the first two, and we're going to be in John chapter 2 this week, and we're going to focus in on the first sort of sign. John's got like 7 signs or miracles. We're going to look at the first one today, which is when he turned water into wine, and at the wedding, and I think it's also a fascinating sort of things because it's not just about turning water into wine. There's a lot of under things that are going on in the story, and sort of knowing what's happening is important. So the weddings, the feasts at weddings were a big deal back then. It wasn't like an afternoon event after a wedding, like a little reception. It went on for a week generally.
They had
And
week-long receptions.
yes,
Whew.
and there
Because I
was
mean, knowing you, you're done after about 2.5 hours at a
yeah, I wouldn't
reception.
have made it.
No,
Yeah,
you would have not
yeah. Although
survived
you
that
think
period.
about back in the
No, you
day
would
too.
not have survived. There's
No, no. Well, I'd have been a different person, but the
if we
the
transplant our 2025 selves
yeah,
into that
yeah,
environment. Yeah, no way.
everybody out.
Yeah.
Um, but they were expected to host these folks and provide for them, and wine was a big part of the celebrations, and it's sort of very much a culture, like an honor-based culture. These are the things you do. They still exist, those kind of cultures all around the world. Um, the shame of not owning up to your end, almost would be unsurvivable as a family, right? If
Mm.
you didn't do this well. So when it starts to come up that at some point during this wedding, there's not going to be enough wine to make it, it's a big deal because of what it represents and the shame and the family and all those things that happen. And so when Mary says to Jesus, and I don't think she's asking him to fix it so much as she's letting him be aware of the problem because he hasn't done any miracles yet. She knows who he is because she's got a whole 30 some years of everything that's going on. And she's like, is there something you can do? And he kind of, some people think he's cross when he said woman, but that's a term of endearment back in the Bible. It's not like it is now. We don't do that now.
Yeah, if I addressed my wife that way, I'd
You'd
get
be
beaten up.
you'd
Well,
be
not
sleeping.
physically, but yeah,
Yeah,
just
you'd be
not.
sleeping over at the church.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, or yeah,
yeah,
in my kids' room, like
yeah, yeah.
make them move up, take one of their beds. I don't know, but yeah, just don't.
So it's not, but he
Doesn't
didn't.
work.
It's not like that. You can see that they use that fairly often, and
Sure.
it's not a cross thing. It's an endearing thing. But he says, it's not my time yet, which can have all sorts of the hour. It's not my hour. All kinds of it's pointing forward to an hour and a time, and the whole wedding thing is pointing forward to a celebration we're going to have with him, at the wedding supper of the Lamb, and all those things. But he does step into it, and uh, he uses these stone pots that were used to hold water and it was for the sort of the religious ritual of washing before the Lord. These six stone pots that were there. And there's probably some reference to the number because seven is a number of completion and six is just short of it. And how these rituals, these religious rituals, were just short of what needed to take place, and they were kind of a constant reminder of the fact that they weren't clean before the Lord. They were always having to clean up with this water, and so there's something notable in the fact that it's these pots that he uses and this water that he turns to wine, saying, we're not going to be under that anymore. The wine is sort of a symbol of what's to come and the joy and the celebration and all the big deals are you being in there of who he is and what he's going to do and what's going to happen, in talking about, how now that Jesus is here, we can have full and abundant lives and that our forever is moving in a much different direction, um, and that and then beyond that, there's some really cool things in the fact that the heart of Jesus. So these stone pots would have been 20 or 30 gallons each, and he turns that all to wine. It's like 180 gallons of wine.
That's a lot of
And,
wine.
they're not going to need that much wine. It was an oversupply, and the wine taster guy said, "This is the most excellent wine. You've saved the nobody ever does this. You've saved the best till last. This is amazing." So it's 180 gallons of really good wine, and so it's an extravagant thing. And I have this thought that there's this family now, and obviously they were stretched thin trying to pull this wedding off because they were about to run out of wine, didn't they? So not only are they provided for so that they're not shamed, but they're going to have an abundance, most likely, which they can sell. and sort of be set up for a while moving forward, right? And so there's these neat pictures going on of how Jesus not only, covers our shame, but then moves us into an abundance. And don't get me wrong, that there's still struggles and issues. We live in a fallen world on a broken planet. It's not a promise that everybody's going to have everything they need all the time. Well, they have what they need, but won't have all those things. But
Right.
it's a pointing forward to a time when certainly everything is going to look that way. And so, it's a really big deal about Jesus. It's a declaration of Jesus bringing life. That's what happens in this first miracle. It's so much bigger than just him turning some water into wine. And so the behind that is the idea that he takes away our shame and gives us life. Isn't that a great sort of, that's a great story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And,
Hmm.
so he wants us to see it, and that's why John has it there in the first spot. It's like, listen, if you don't get lost on the actual he turned water to wine. It's a bigger, much bigger picture of what's happening. And then, from that, what we need to figure out is, sort of what are the stone pots that we have in our own lives? Like what are the things that we're keeping stuck in ritual and rule following that Jesus wants to bring freedom to and to allow us experience life in a different way than maybe we are. Uh, and that the idea behind the whole wine in the story is that it symbolizes throughout the Bible joy and celebration, and it's really a pointing forward to a much bigger wedding and the one that we're waiting for. And so it's set up to ask us to think, well, what am I relying on for joy or for happiness? And if it's anything other than Jesus, it's going to disappoint. And we need to think about that, and we need to be ready to listen to what Jesus says, and because that's where we're going to find life. And certainly Mary said to the people that were in the situation, just do whatever he says. And so they didn't question it. They brought the water and did the thing, and Jesus does his thing. And yeah, and then one of those hopeful things we have to think about is that day when he returns, and we're part of this amazing feast at the wedding supper of the Lamb, and what that leads into then, for all eternity. So that's what's happening. In short little verses, but powerful, lots of stuff going on, and a real neat introduction, I think, into the life that Jesus has for us.
Man, I'm really looking forward to that one. We've read that miracle for so long. We have all these images in our head of what it was, but just to kind of hear it from that perspective is really cool. The promise of it, him taking us from our shame into just freedom from that, and from
Right.
scarcity to abundance, and how
Yeah.
cool
Yeah.
that is, and how we
Wow.
can
Yeah.
look forward to that. And
Yeah.
uh,
It's
you know
amazing, really, when you
right,
think about it.
what Jesus can do with just stone things of water.
Yeah. Yeah.
What he can turn that into is also
Yeah.
also very encouraging.
Yeah.
So
And I love the thought of how he takes, and not only does he take away their shame, he like brings this whole, okay, let's, so you don't have to continue to deal with this. Here you go.
right, right, right.
And
Provides a way.
powerful stuff.
So good. So yeah, that's going to be really good. Looking forward to this weekend. I'll get to do this message, which I'm very excited about. And this podcast started because we would go over the messages, and so you'd help me with it, and you still do a tremendous job with that. And the hope is that you guys are blessed by this as well at the same time. So yeah, really good stuff. Y'all keep listening to the podcast, share it, all that good stuff. Like I said, I'm going to try this year to share these in the site-wide activity on the page. Another great resource. And yeah, keep taking your courses, share it with your friends, all that good stuff. Dad, thank you so much for your wisdom and your sermons. It's really
Yeah.
good, and
Hey,
I'm thankful
they
for it.
also, as they if they watch these podcasts, I also put as blog posts, sort of notes, not all the notes, but the ideas pop up on the Online Bible Institute, um, and they're named, and so they come out, a couple of weeks before we ever get to them. So
Yeah,
there's sort of that is there as well. And then when you take the courses, the notes are there. So for anybody who wanted to use this stuff,
yeah.
in their own ministries, it's certainly there for them.
There's 2 years worth of messages written
Yeah.
for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a cool thing to think about because yeah,
Yeah.
as we talked about sermon prep, I took a course late last year on what it looks like to make a sermon. It's just passage by passage, like you said, and you figure out how to make it topical. You find a balance in between. So hopefully
Yeah.
that's a blessing to your ministries as well.
Good.
Just like this podcast certainly is. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, thank you all. We're glad you were here. We will see you hopefully next week.